You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Julie H. How to radiate feminine energy to live a soft life. Habits, dating tips, and healing. Ladies, welcome back. We have these little episodes where I coach a real life person who, through showing up here, pays it forward. And I think these are some of our all-time favorite episodes. And so today, I don't even call it the hot seat because it's like the love seat. I have Julie, who has graciously shown up here to give some support. So tell everyone sort of like who you are, like in the world, like what's your external identity? Where are you feeling stuck right now in terms, because I know we talked about like you're not stepping into your power, you're not being in your greatest visibility, it's uncomfortable to be seen. So, and that is a great oxymoron in held up into like who you are in the world externally. So why don't you sort of set the stage and tell everyone?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for graciously giving me some of your time and sharing with me your wisdom. And it's beautiful.
Yay.
Who is my external avatar in this world is a physician. I'm a subspecialist, pediatric gynecologist. I work at Texas Children's Hospital, so it's in Houston, Texas. I love what I do. I love my career, my profession, my patients. I have a lot of love to share with them. So that's my external avatar navigating this world. And then what we talked about was the external coaching, or the coaching around stepping forward into being more seen, both professionally, but really personally, and in love and in life, and then manifesting all the desires and dreams that come with that.
Yeah. So talk to me about when you think about where you feel comfortable being seen. Like, and I'm guessing it's like there's that patient, or you're doing your research, because I know you've done a ton of really important research. So what does it feel like when you're comfortable being seen?
The best word I can describe is alignment and flow. I feel relaxed. I feel open. I feel expansive. I feel confident. And then all of the other delicious things that flow from those core feelings. And I can tell you that I feel the most in flow in 3 different places.
Okay.
Maybe 4. One is at work when I'm with patients or operating. I feel very much in flow. One is with my family. I love showing up and being present with my family, and I feel very much at peace and seen and honored. The other is in the gym, is actually where I feel very comfortable, very confident in who I am. And then there's nuance to which gym and why, and perhaps you'll ask me that, or perhaps I'll dive in that.
Okay, so this is great. So we've got like, and just so, you know, you're like a very successful, competitive athlete, right? You've done a lot of work to have all this amazing healing and be really accepted in your family. Work is kind of like, you know, no brainer, right? Always been the most easy. So now if you look at those 3 things and you go, okay, well, what are the conditions where I feel like it's easy to be seen, right? Like my light shines bright. What are the commonalities, if any, around that? The circumstances.
I think the most immediate response is that I don't feel vulnerable.
Okay, so
those are the commonalities that I can immediately point to.
So you feel safe, emotionally safe.
And in control. I know exactly what I'm doing. The outcome is predicted. I feel steady.
Okay, and talk to me, how does that show up in like your family situation? Because that's a less clear path of like control and know what's going on.
I think as humans in a family system, you develop roles that you fulfill, right? And I think one part of becoming an adult is reframing the perspective that one had as a child and developing into the role as I'm no longer a child, I'm no longer a teenager, I'm an adult now, I'm maybe a caregiver for elderly parents, and being comfortable in those roles, navigating being a daughter, a sister, a friend, a caregiver. All of those roles feel comfortable to me. I know my role in the family and I play it well, and our family has a lot of love and delight in each other, but there's no surprises necessarily.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So in these situations where you don't feel like inhibited or that you have something to hide, you are able to control the environment. You feel like you can predict the outcome, and that makes you feel emotionally safe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you were to look at something that specific where you feel like it's been challenging to create that same sense of safety, what comes to mind?
The most obvious leap is dating and relationships. I predicted we would get to that. So that's one. And then there's sort of corollaries or like feeder vessels, as I call them, into what makes dating feel approachable. I think dating and relationships are naturally something that leads to vulnerability, and vulnerability is sort of the opposite of what we just talked about. And it's an area of feeling comfortable being in, navigating self and other in this like beautiful union, but it takes, or not but, and that takes comfort with oneself and comfort in, you know, your power and being seen and knowing your needs and expressing them with love and curiosity about the other person and being in acceptance and self-compassion and all of those things in sometimes shifting sands. And so that is the area that
feels scary.
Feels scary.
Yeah.
Offshoots of those are, you know, how do you step forward in, or how do I step forward in my femininity? How do I flirt without being attached to an outcome? How do I, you know, navigate the early parts of the relationship and not let my amygdala hijack the, you know, data that I'm collecting. So all of those are like the feeder vessels of work.
It's really scary. Yeah. So there's a couple things. I think that first of all, like giving yourself permission to understand that there are ways you can be in control of all of that. Yeah. You're like, what? How? Okay. So first of all, tell me more. So first of all, like, and I can't remember if we talked about this in the past, but there are like energy influencers, right? That are very much part of what can be a pathway to safety, right? So now I am so far away from being a medical professional, I could probably be any further away, except that what I would guess is that when you go in to do surgery, right, there are all these things that could go wrong. And so you have checklist upon checklist upon checklist of like, what is the optimal external and internal situation so to minimize any kind of risk, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you think about these energy influencers, and we'll talk about what they are, and I'm going to have you kind of create your little mini success formula here. What we're saying is, if I can control these energy influencers, and one of them is my connection to myself, then that means that if I have an overall view that what's happening is happening for me rather than to me, almost like someone who says, sure, Julie, doctor, cut me open, fix my shit. They're trusting you. There's also this divine part that's going to kick in, right? You're going to be that same person for yourself, whereby you're going to take care of making you be the most you that you can be, knowing that there's this divine thing and that's just happening for you, not to you. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because if that's the zone where you feel the most confident, then I'm just going to say, cool, you're doing that for yourself. Because you're powerful. Okay. So some of those influencers, so I use this little acronym Bessie to help people remember it. So we're going to start with the first one, which is B, which is like physical body, right? Okay, so imagine you're on a date where you like someone, right? And you can sort of manage the energy over your physical self. Let's just talk about what are ways that you feel that you can make yourself be safe and play. You said playing the role like you play in your family, being who you really are. What are some of those things that you would say, okay, how do I create physical safety when I feel really vulnerable?
I think same as walking into any surgery, it's the pregame is really important. And I have learned through experience, because words don't teach, experience teaches, that my setup is really important. So making sure, I think especially for me, having time and space in between the end of one thing and the beginning of the date so that I can be calm, be in alignment, be in my divine power, feel my personality emerge from one of maybe contraction during the day to one of expansion, and, tap into exactly the lens shift that you mentioned, right? How can I learn from this situation? How can I know that this is happening for my benefit? How could it be easy? How could this be something delightful that may come out of it and I'm open to the miraculous? How can I align myself with all of those lenses that are so important?
Right. So your physical self might be things like, and this is so relevant for so many people, right? Whether you're showing up for a meeting or an interview or a date or whatever it is, like, wow, I really need to create spaces in this. I can't be rushed. For your physical self, it might be stuff like, I need to make sure that I sleep. Maybe hearing music makes me feel empowered. Maybe it's making sure I have a snack. Right? So for you, starting to think like, okay, control is my jam. Right? Right? And this is like, by the way, for everyone listening, because I used to think about this as like in terms of like raising babies, right? Like you have to have the funnel really tight of routine before you can expand it.
Yes.
Right. So if you have someone that you're working with, there's at the beginning, right out of surgery or whatever, there's all these rules, right? And once everything gets to a little bit of a stability, then you can like try this or eat a little of this or have less, right? So right now we're just making your funnel very simple and less flexible to start.
I love it.
Okay.
And all the things that you've said are things that I do. I put into practice. So the time I get there early, I know exactly where I'm going. I meditate in the car at least for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be meditation. I breathe.
Yeah. Center yourself.
I never go into a date hungry. Never. I love to listen to music that helps expand me. And scent is really important for me. So I often have incense both in the car and before I leave the house. I also have learned to take a lot of time in between stimulus and response. So I have learned to slow down both my movements and my speaking and my responding, because that gap is where my power is in not, being hijacked in the moment.
Exactly. Right. So, and that is even like, I love that. That's so beautiful. Because think about like a hummingbird, right? It's so fast with its wings. You can't even sometimes see it, right? But when you put that hummingbird and you slow that down, like in a photo, you catch that moment, right? The hummingbird is being seen. So when you slow down your physical self, those little wings, right? You can, then you're allowing, you are to physically like slow down and embody being seen.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, so much. I think you're reminding me of something I think I heard Kathy Heller say, that we can only manifest at the speed of our nervous systems. And I thought that was so beautiful. And that's basically exactly what you do.
Yeah, right. So part of being seen and think now, okay, when I'm successful at the gym with my family, right? Like there's no rush. I feel safe. I'm controlling, I have expectations, boundaries, all those physical sort of manifestations that create emotional safety. So when you're thinking about like, how am I going to show up and allow myself to be seen on the physical level, there's a lot of environmental setup
Yes.
to show up, and which is the opposite of what most people do when they think about dating, right? I've been saying this for a while, but it's almost like we think of dating as like this very casual, like whatever. It works, it doesn't work. It's a coffee, it's a swipe, whatever, right? Like we're just cramming it in, which is the opposite, right? Of like giving a shit, right? And showing up.
Yeah.
And so thinking about like, wow, I can control this. I can create this safety by we just only at the first thing, body, physical.
Yeah.
There's so much more room. Okay, so let's talk about the E. The first E is emotional. We're just going to talk about this because when we look at like, so if energy is influenced by how I show up as my emotional adult,
Yes.
right? Then to the extent of those things that are in your control, how do you allow yourself to be seen? What are any tools that you have or ways of preparing or thinking or being on the date, not even the doing, but just being on the date that allow you to show up at the level of your emotional adult, your essential self, like the core of who you are, that makes you feel like, okay, I can control this to the extent that I can control this.
I love that. Again, I think some of it is my pregame. So I rarely miss a day of meditation and journaling, but before a date, that's also important. The breathing, it doesn't have to be a full-on meditation, but I often go through the exercise of at least getting out some emotion on paper. So whatever I'm feeling, so that it's out there and I'm not holding it in my body. I had some other thoughts already and they already left.
Well, I'm going to throw one out that you might not have thought about. Yeah. So one thing that I think is really important when we think about our emotions, especially everyone who listens to this show is like smart. You've like done the work, you have the t-shirt, you read the book, right? And I think when we get nervous or excited or afraid, or we start futurizing or having anxiety or worry about what does this person think of me, or is this going to be a waste of my time, right? All of that is creating that like cortisol, adrenaline, emotional state. And our nervous system starts to go, meh. So one thing that I've been talking a lot about lately is this idea of polarity, meaning that parts of you are scared and nervous, right? Yeah. And rather than shaming that part, because you've read the book and have the t-shirt and being like, I shouldn't feel this way. It's only a date. You're trying to like talk your emotional self off the ledge and just telling it to like calm down, chill out, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right. And that basically restarts the whole like, I'm not enough. What if I do? Right. It activates everything we don't want us to feel. So in this idea of polarity, we go like, oh, parts of me feel scared.
Yeah.
And both
parts.
Exactly. Right. Because we need to assure, like, it makes perfect sense, right? It makes perfect sense. Why does it make perfect sense that we're scared? Why is it okay that we're human? Oh, by the way, maybe this other person is having the same experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're all just humans being.
Yeah.
Right? And then we go, okay, well, parts of me are also like confident. Parts of me also know that it doesn't have to go perfect. Parts of me know that this dude is a human too, and it'll be great or it won't, but I'll learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So part of that emotional setup is giving yourself permission to be human, having self-compassion and self-acceptance, and then choosing our emotional high intelligence, so to speak, right? And say, how can I choose to show up, knowing that there are parts of me that are scared?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yes. Yes.
So if you're to do that, then how does that allow you to more fully be seen?
I think when shame, or I feel, not I think, I feel that when shame is welcomed, when I welcome all those parts of me, and I sometimes, this analogy works for me. I just imagine little puppies, like little bunnies, like I have to just love them like they're little bunnies inside of me. Like that's just a part of me. And when I can welcome all of those parts, I feel so much less constricted. And therefore I can extend that same lack of constriction / expansion, right? The opposite to the other person. Like maybe they also have those little, whatever, bunnies, rabbits, whatever they have inside of them, childhood wounds, shame about this, that, and the other thing that they're also bringing. And so can we meet ourselves like there together?
Yeah.
And just have and let it not be serious. It could just
exactly right. So that, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Julie, because that's the other part of like an emotional like pregame, right? To be like, well, how could I just allow this to be fun?
Yeah.
How could my emotional child who likes to play and be creative, and that's that flirting part, right? The little girl who's like, let's just go play. That's what I love about watching kids at the park, right? It's like, hey, do you want to play? Like they don't care. Right? Yeah. I started skiing again recently, and so now all my Instagram feed is like skiing stuff. So anyway, so I saw this video that was like a 3-year-old snowboarding, and it was so awesome because the kid was mic'd up. And so the little thing was like, oh, wow, this is kind of scary. Oh, this is so cool. Like the whole thing of like, I'm doing it, right? Like this little narrative of a playful 3-year-old just like reflowing, right? Like, and so there's that playful part of our emotional self that we could also invite on the date.
I love that. And it's so incredible how fear and excitement feel the same, right? It's just the narrative that's different. Like, this is so scary. This is so exciting.
Yeah. Like I'm showing up for my life, right? And so when we go into the date and we're like, instead of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to eat, I'm going to sleep, all those things, we're like, and also like, I'm going to have fun and I'm going to create an emotional vibration for this date to invite the other person in to just like, let's just be our carefree selves instead of figuring out like, are you my life partner? Let's just like have fun.
Totally.
So that could make you feel more seen in what way?
Well, I think when it's just easy, or maybe easy is not the right word, easeful. When it's easeful, right? It can be fun. It can be easeful. It doesn't have to be something serious. It doesn't have to be, am I going through my checklist of non-negotiables and do they meet all? No, it's like, do I feel comfortable? Do I feel happy? Do I feel like I could laugh,
Exactly. So think about, so we talked about your physical setup. We talked about emotional setup, right? Those are just 2 little angles, but I want you all who are listening to be like, all these things that we've created. And if Julie were to replay this and she was making a list form, we've probably got like 30 or 40 or 50 ways, right? To be like, hey, I can feel safe. These are all things that are in my control versus like dating is so hard. It's all about what the dude, do I get picked or not?
Yeah.
Or is he a waste of my time because he's a nerd or whatever we would make up about a person. Yeah. So is this helpful so far?
So helpful. I mean, I love having these types of conversations, and, sometimes it's things that I've heard before, but you say it in a different way that it unlocks some, peace in my mind, and just to reinforce the behaviors that lead to success and the intentionality and the fun, the playfulness. Like so much of that is beautiful and also so easy to forget.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you said that, because the other thing is, so you can go up on a date and have the best of intentions, right? And still it's awkward or it's weird and all of those things. So when you look at like, well, what else is in my control from the emotional point of view, is we can say, okay, well, what did I learn?
Sure.
Right? Like, because
I'm here to practice.
Yeah, right. Because we might get activated, or this person, we might have transference, and this person has this weird mannerism that reminds us of our ex. And all of a sudden we're like, doesn't matter how much we prepared, right? Because this was a learning moment, or this is a really important piece of the journey, right? Someone asked me the other day, I'm afraid to go on a date because what if I don't like him? And then he thinks that I do because I'm being playful and, my awesome self. And then he tries to kiss me and then I don't want to kiss him. And then I have to explain it and then I'm going to make it feel bad. Totally happen. Right. But in the end, and this did happen for one of my clients, in the end, she was like totally able to learn from it and send a message to him that was like, I think I made the end of our date so awkward.
That's so beautiful. That's sharing and authenticity and just vulnerability is really so beautiful.
It is. And what came from it? She was actually on the show. What she realized is that part of her defense system is that she makes other people so comfortable that she doesn't have to share herself. Right? That she just talk, ask questions, engage. She can do the date, right? Like she's a great first dater. And then the guy never really asks about her. And he thinks, wow, she's so into me because she's asking me questions. And she realized that the whole thing was a big cover up, right? So the swerve and then talking about that, like, and having that kind of repair conversation, he didn't end up being her person, but like that was a huge growth moment. So in the end, right, emotionally just being like, whoa, look at what shows up for me when I'm just in the act of putting myself out there and learning and growing. And so at the emotional level, there is no losing when you kind of have this, right? So even if you are being seen and there's a flaw, yay. Even though it hurts and it feels weird. That makes sense?
Totally. It's just tweaking. It's just learning from, right? Being in, I think as you had mentioned, what's the mastery here? What am I learning? Like, how am I growing into learning how to navigate, these sometimes awkward moments with somebody and still being open and still creating connection and still seeing what can be created if given enough space and time.
Exactly. And again, all these things are we have the ability, we can make the choice to be in control, meaning that we can create emotional safety. So when there is no flaw that is, debilitating because we're mastering how we're approaching it and experiencing it, then we can be seen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it's less about like, and worrying about his experience and more about like, how am I co-creating an experience and what am I learning from it? Because I'm not responsible, and nor is anyone who listening. I want to underline this. You're not responsible 100% for how this person experiences you or the date.
Mm-hmm.
You can't control that, right?
Yes. Yeah. His experience is his experience. I can control my experience and the beauty that we create together. But other than that, that's it.
Right. That's it. Okay. So we've talked about, and we're not going to have time to go through all of them, but I'm going to just pick one more. But so we talked about body. We've talked about emotional. Yeah. One of the S is social. And this is and I'm just going to highlight this one because this is one where everyone is sort of like custom, right? Like, meaning when I want to be seen, what is the best social environment for me to do that? Is it like I had a client once who she said, when I celebrate a win, I want to go to like a festival or a concert. Like I want to be around a ton of people. I want to vibe out energy, music. And I'm like, oh, wow, that is the last thing that I would want to do to celebrate or recharge, right? I'm like, I don't know, sit on a beach, read a book, talk to no one, right? So everybody has their own level of social, influencer. So I just want you to think about to the extent that, again, you can set that up, right? And feel safe and talk about expectations or what you prefer, what you like. You get to say that. So if someone says, hey, for our first date, do you want to go dancing? And you're like, actually, I'd love that idea. That would be something so fun if we continue to see each other. I'd love for our first date where we could just chat and talk. So what ideas do you have for that? And that's a very feminine way of stating a preference without saying your idea sucks.
Totally. And having the courage, I think what I've learned from listening to you is having the courage to, not be, not be ashamed to say, in a very kind, feminine, delightful way, redirect into actually what I would prefer is, and here are some options. And then, we could pick together through those. And knowing oneself enough to not negotiate, necessarily your influencers, right? Like, I don't think that I would want to go on a first date to a like super loud concert or something like that. I think it would be harder to connect. But nor do I necessarily want to sit down and, I like moving. So I would love a walking date, or I would love to go to the park, or I would love to, I don't know, go to a farmer's market or something like that, where there's engagement and
that's great. And that's, the best way is to know and to not have that shame about it, and to realize, like, how am I setting myself up so that I can really be seen and allow that to happen? And again, to say, like, it's not that I would never do that, right? It's that I'd really like to get to know you. So, okay, so we've got social. The other S is spiritual. We'll talk about that another time. And then the I is intellect. Mm-hmm. And the last E is environment, which is kind of what we've talked a little bit about that. I did have a client one time who came to me, and she'd heard so much crap online that she said that you don't want to appear too interested in a guy, so that when you're sitting at the table, you're like more like this, and you like cross your there's like a whole physical, environmental sort of thing. But she couldn't hear very well. So every time she'd go on a date, she'd do that thing, but then she actually couldn't hear the guy. And she was embarrassed to say, like, I'd love to be in, like, you may notice me like leaning forward. I sometimes have a hard time hearing. Like, that's okay. Like, I'd love to go talk, have our first date in a place that's got, a little less ambient noise. So, but what I want to talk about with you is the intellect piece, because I think this is a really interesting one. If there's an energetic influencer around our intellect or our mind, this is about not being overly or understimulated with what needs to happen on the date. And I think for a lot of ladies, because you want to learn if this guy is your person, that is because you have a paradigm of a couple of things. I need to be perfect. I need to be smart. I need to know if this is a waste of my time or not a waste of my time. I need to ask the right questions. Okay. So that's a long list for your little brain to show up on a date and have to do perfectly or well.
Right. That's a lot to carry around in the knapsack going there.
Yeah. And I think at an unconscious level, a lot of us, our intellect is really busy preparing for the date.
Yeah.
Because for most of my listeners, and from what I know about you as a very smart person, your intellect usually drives if you don't like sort of have an integrated moment.
Yeah.
Because it's the strongest muscle.
Yeah. Totally.
Right? It's like your left hook or whatever your strongest box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So so if you were to say, like, how do I allow all of Julie to be seen, not just my brain, but my feminine side, my sweet side, my curious side, my humor, how would you allow yourself to be seen so that all of you shows up on the date, not just your brain?
What is immediately coming up for me is that I go into the date with only really one outcome, and that's to have a great time and to have fun, to enjoy myself. I don't necessarily walk in with the checklist and the this and the whatever. I like telling stories, and I love to hear stories, and I think you can learn a lot just by exchanging fun stories. So to me, it's a story. It's just a storytelling. Like, I'm here to learn about you and have a great time, and whatever happens, happens. And I don't know, I just don't make it so heavy, I think. Or I try not to.
Yeah. And so you might even have a little conversation with your intellect and be like, hey, I know you're used to like doing all the heavy lifting, but today we're going to let playful, emotional Julie show up also. Right? We're going to let we're going to have some faith. So the spiritual side of Julie is just going to like lead, right? Intellect, you're really good. You'll show up exactly when you need to. Right? But you don't have to carry the whole date.
Yeah.
And I think having a moment where you acknowledge that there are other parts of yourself that want to be seen.
Definitely.
You can sort of like have a more integrated Julie show up on the date rather than just like, and that's for those listening. I think that's where the masculine energy can come through, right?
Yes. Totally. I think when I can decrease the signal of my intellect, I can let my intuition speak louder in direct things, which is where all of that femininity and receptivity and allowing, I like that.
And you could say to your intellect, right? So this is an integrated approach. You could be like, intellect, here's the thing. Pregame is very important. You can run that show. You can plan out the timing. You can plan out loud room, quiet room. Like, you are so good at that.
Yeah.
Like pregame, all you. On the date, we're all going to show up.
We're all going to show up. Me and all my friends.
Yeah, right? Like my body, right? Like my physical stuff, I'm going to be embodied. I'm going to be present. I'm going to like have fun. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to create space, right? Like there's so many other pieces like of all of who we are, right? All of our attributes. And so even as a practice that your intellect may love is like, write down, like, how am I really being Julie, all of Julie, when I show up on a date?
I love that.
What does being seen look like? So let intellect write that down.
Yeah.
And then maybe even before the date, you're like, you almost read that as like a prayer or a meditation or a blessing to all the parts of you.
I love that. That's beautiful.
So, because I think, again, when we look at all these influencers, mostly what happens is just your intellect is like, all right, date, let's go. Right? And then all of those other parts are like, scared, right? And so we shut down or we don't allow ourselves to be seen because the intellect is just one small part of who you are. And so being seen by the very nature of it is allowing all parts. And so we don't want to overemphasize that one move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what I'm feeling just in receiving what you're saying is just giving it permission to not be the driver, and acknowledging, listen, intellect, you're great. You are fantastic at doing this part, and this part. Here's where we need a little bit less of you for right now.
Exactly. And there's an exercise that I've done with clients where and you might want to even journal this out or speak it out, where there's a conversation between intellect and emotional self. Right? Because I've done this with clients and there's like an argument before we can agree to like all show up. And intellect is like, but the minute emotional self, I let you just get insecure or, get too emotional or too attached and emotionally. Well, that's because you're making me do it perfect. There's this war between us, right? And so what we want to do is we want to come to like sort of like an agreement, a truce. Like, you know what? We all have our strengths and we're all going to show up because this is just an opportunity to practice being more of me. And the last thing that I will say to you about like, how do I be seen is like, there is no fail when you are just attempting in life to practice being more of who you are. No fail. We're just practicing being more me, right?
Yes. That's beautiful. That's the other highlight, underline, rewind, 15 seconds back, everybody. That's really beautiful. Is that 47 minutes, if anyone wants to know?
I love that. Okay, so if we were to do a little like recap, like your intellect can recap.
Okay.
But I want you to think about, so if you are saying like, what are the things then that could take me out of being seen in my life and play small, knowing what we've just talked about? What is one trap you don't want to fall into?
I think it's actually what resonated the most for me is what we just talked about, not always having my intellect lead. I think that is what keeps me safe. and keeps me in control and keeps me in the balance, tipping in the wrong way into the masculine heavy. So that last nugget was really powerful. I love it.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Love it. So we've got a lot. So, and I want you to sort of, as you think about this and everyone who's listening, it's like, wow. So, there's a mythology that, dating isn't safe because I don't have control. And we just talked in the last however many minutes of all the different ways that we can create control and create safety. And that our emotional part is really important. And we want to make sure we acknowledge not just how do we keep us safe emotionally, but also how do we bring out the playfulness and the fun, right? And not forget that. How do we set ourselves up so that there's physical safety, like that there's spaciousness, that you're looking at your environment, that you're taking in social. There's a spiritual piece, right? Like we didn't even talk about that, but like, what if this is one divine moment with another human? Like if you think about dating, just like, this is like literally insane. Like two random humans have like met in a moment.
Synchronicity. Like
for what?
Paths crossed. Who knows?
Who knows?
No, let's discover.
So a date is a spiritual experience, period.
Totally. If it's what was the number? 1 in 4 trillion chance of any person being born, like the odds of crossing paths with somebody, whoop, it's really powerful stuff.
One of my favorite books is The Midnight Library. Have you read that yet?
No.
Oh my God, you'd love it. Basically, I recommend it to everyone. One of my clients said at the New Year, can you recommend a good book for me? And I was like, The Midnight Library. She went and got it. She's like, this is not a self-help book. I go, I know. It's a story. It's a book. It's fiction. But in the story, this woman basically has all this regret over how she's like 40 or whatever. And she's like, I made all of these wrong decisions. I screwed this up. I could have done this. I should have been with that guy. And the whole story, she goes into this library, and it is fiction, where this librarian from her childhood shows up as an angel, basically. It was like, here's the books of all the possible different versions of your life based on different stories. And different choices. Go pick one. You pick one, you get to go immediately be in that life.
Wow.
And she does. And that's the book. Yeah. And so in the end, well, I won't tell then, but in the end, that's really what life is, right? Like there's just all these random choices and moments that we have. But if we believe that our spiritual self is on this path for this one moment and life is happening for us, not to us, then you might as well be seen and show up for it, because there's a lot of juice in that lemon.
So much. There's so much to squeeze out of that moment. And yes, exactly. You're one decision away from a totally different life. And you and the avatar could be right in this dimension over here with one different choice. It's amazing. I love it.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for showing up, for being so vulnerable and inspiring. Ladies, if you would like to be coached on the show, make sure you reach out to me at VIP@datingwithdignity.com. You can follow me at Marni Battista _ on Instagram, or I'm sort of old fashioned. You can also find me on Facebook. So just friend request me. I know. I'm like,
in request you. Okay.
Friend request me. I'm like, hey, let's be friends. I know. But bottom line, I think that what Julie said is so true. There are so many ways in this episode you can life check yourself. We went over so many of them, because remember, you are in control of so many things. The things that are not in your control are an opportunity for surrender and a gift and growth.
A gift. What a gift this was.
Oh,
thank you for gifting me all of this beautiful time and energy.
I love you, Julie. Ladies, whatever you do, don't forget, life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP. That's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Battista, and let's talk soon.